Buonasera a tutti e benvenuti all'ultimo appuntamento del programma L'arte nel paesaggio. Questo progetto nasce dalla collaborazione con il FAI, il Fondo Ambiente Italiano, e con l'idea di raccontare alcuni dei più importanti esempi di arte ambientale nel mondo. In occasione delle scorse lezioni abbiamo parlato dello Yorkshire Park, dell'Oasicelle e del parco Zegna. E quest'oggi chiudiamo con il Benesse Art Site di Naoshima e lo facciamo grazie alle parole del suo direttore artistico Akiko Miki, già curatore al Palais de Tokyo di Parigi. E ringrazio quindi Akiko per essere qui con noi e per volerci raccontare un po' l'esperienza di questo grande progetto che si sviluppa in uno degli arcipelaghi del Giappone, bagnato dal mare di Seto, e che appunto al suo interno ha alcuni delle installazioni d'arte contemporanea e di architettura contemporanea più significative, che si esprimono non soltanto attraverso dei musei, ma anche attraverso alcuni alberghi e alcune abitazioni. Il tutto in straordinaria relazione e connessione con l'ambiente circostante. Quindi veramente un grandissimo complesso pensato proprio per il benessere, da qui anche il nome Benesse, non soltanto appunto delle persone che vivono in questo grande complesso, in questo arcipelago, ma anche per i visitatori che si recano a vedere questo straordinario progetto di cui appunto ci parlerà adesso Akiko. Quindi grazie ancora e a te la parola.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming here. I was very much surprised that here in Rome, the weather influenced a lot. And in rainy days, I was very much worried that there will not be anyone, but you were here, so thank you very much for coming in such a bad weather, and then also thank you very much to Maxi to inviting me to come here to speak about the Benesse Art Site Naoshima. The project has been developed in the island of the Seto Inland Sea in Japan over 30 years. To start with, as a kind of warm-up, I would like to start by showing a short film presenting the site. So can you please start showing the video by turning off the light, please? So I hope you felt a kind of atmosphere of the site. Now I will be speaking about the major architectural project, artworks, and the project at the Benesse Art Site Naoshima. Just a moment, okay. And speaking under the title of Insight for the Museum of the Future, the Benesse Art Site Naoshima experiment. By doing so, I will be addressing some of the directions and the specificity explored in our project from an artistic point of view. It will not be possible to present the entire scope of the art site, of course, but I hope that today's session will become a valuable opportunity for all of us to reflect together on this rare and, in many ways, unique initiative. Benesse Art Site Naoshima was initiated on the island of Naoshima at the end of the 1980s by the initiative of Mr. Soichiro Fukutake to revitalize the region through nature, architecture, and art, and today include art museum and project on two more neighboring islands, Teshima and Inujima. And here is another map. And as you see, I don't know, here this is Tokyo. So our site is located western part of Japan, which is between Honshu and Shikoku. As you may know, Japan is consisting of 4 big islands of Hokkaido in the north and Honshu, where Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, the big cities, and Shikoku and Kyushu in the west. And now it is maybe useful to start by mentioning this historical context of our activities. So most art museums are located in cities, like Maxi here in Rome, but the Benesse Art Site Naoshima is, in contrast, located on island far from urban centers, which directly influence the direction and our activities took. While the natural setting is beautiful, the Seto region was designated among Japan's first national parks as early as 1934. The area was also directly impacted by the negative legacy resulting from the excess of modernization and financial capitalism prevailing in and maybe defining Japan's 20th century. So this is southern Naoshima in 1986. When the project was initiated in the late 1980s, Naoshima's natural environment had been severely damaged by toxic emissions from a copper refinery plant located in the northern half of the island. Sorry, I missed. Okay. Inujima Island also was the site of a copper refinery. The smelter here opened in 1909, operating for only 10 years before being left abandoned for nearly a century due to the sudden collapse in copper prices following the end of World War I. On Teshima Island, 900,000 tons of industrial waste were dumped illegally in a corner of the island. The insular context also implies that the region is strongly impacted by issues prevalent throughout the country, such as rural depopulation and demographic aging. On the other hand, traditional townscapes and ancient ways of life are also preserved on the same remote islands. One could say that the island can be a paradise, but at the same time, it also faces the risk of being turned into a wasteland. In other words, it is a place at the risk of the great force shaping our age, where it is crucial to think independently. It is also full of new possibilities and to radiate a sense of potential. The fact that the inhabitants of Naoshima have long maintained a vibrant community striving to overcome the hardship from their insular context with a spirit of independence, or the determined fight put up by locals on Teshima against the waste dumping scandal hitting their island, should not be forgotten to understand the local context behind this art and architecture project. As the name suggests, Benesse Art Site Naoshima is an art site and not simply an art museum. It includes art museums, but its activities are a bit different from the modern definition of the term. In essence, collecting, preserving, and exhibiting artworks, studying, researching, and diffusing knowledge about important cultural artifacts. Our focus is much broader, as our activities specifically and directly take place in the wider context of the landscapes and daily life unfolding on the island, in relationship with the local communities, their culture, and their history. By situating contemporary art and nature within the landscape and culture of the region, our aim is to create a special and truly unique environment which provide opportunities for people to think about important values, to ponder what Benesse, or living well, truly means. And by conducting such activities over a long period of time, the project will continue to grow together with the local community in which it is rooted. As such, I believe that the Benesse Art Site Naoshima also addresses much broader social questions and maybe even about our lives and civilizations. It is a place where experiment can be conducted, where new directions can be explored. At the origin of this belief in the power of art put into shape by Soichiro Fukutake, the founder and president of Benesse Art Site Naoshima, lies the encounter with the works of Yasuo Kuniyoshi, which Fukutake's father used to hold in his art collection. Kuniyoshi was born in 1889 in neighboring Okayama, the Fukutake family's hometown. He immigrated to the US as a laborer when he was young, and later became known as an artist in the American art scene during the first half of the 20th century. The paintings of Kuniyoshi, who was also a social reformer, made Fukutake understand that art is a catalyst for thought. This idea very much lies at the core of Benesse Art Site Naoshima, and probably led to the selection of artists and architects at the art site whose works convey strong messages. So this is very beginning. Naoshima International Camp, realized in 1989. After opening this campsite for children on Naoshima in the late 80s, following his deceased father's wishes, Fukutake opened the Benesse House in 1992. This structure by Tadao Ando marks the formal beginning of the art project at the Benesse Art Site Naoshima. The building functions both as an art museum and a hotel, united within the same architectural structure. It was conceived to merge with the surrounding scenery, inviting nature inside through its generous openings. This first milestone marked the path for the future development of the art site. Here, unlike ordinary museums, where strict security measures regulate the experience, visitors are invited to fully immerse themselves in art without having to worry about the time. Guests staying at the hotel can encounter the works in a more intimate setting, on a more personal level. This idea is connected not only to the art exhibited in the museum's galleries or in the individual guest rooms, but also extend to later works such as Saigo-chan's cultural melding bus or Shinro Otake's public bus project, I Love You, also on Naoshima, This is the room realized by Janet Cardiff and George Bless Miller, who was the fourth Benesse Prize awardees. The Benesse is giving for the young artists since 1995 the award, Benesse Prize, in relation to the Venice Biennial. So this is Saigo Chan's. He was the first Benesse Prize awardee who has realized later cultural melting bus project for Naoshima. And this one is the real public bus where people really emerge physically into their artworks. And I cannot show some of the images, but in the bus bottom, you see some of the images. The idea actually came by the discovery of Shunga prints in the old abandoned house that in Naoshima that Mr. Fukutake bought. It was actually, you know, the erotic Shunga prints. The owner has hidden these Shunga prints underneath the tatami mat. Probably he was hiding because he was worried that his wife would find this Shunga prints. So he was hiding underneath the tatami mat. And Mr. Fukutake really liked that discovery of Shunga prints. So he wanted to incorporate that image in these works. So he asked Otake, the artist, to put that image on the bottom of the bathtub. So, sorry, it goes too much. In 1994, with the Out of Bounds exhibition, we started exploring the possibilities for site-specific works to be installed outside of the museum's walls, directly in nature. This later led to inviting artists to stay on the island to experience Naoshima's nature or be inspired by architectural space and create works that can only exist on Naoshima. People were invited to stay in the hotel, walk around the hotel museum inside and outside, and experience the place physically with their five senses. Like this, our approach to create the environment for guests to pause and contemplate about the relationship of humans and nature gradually materialized. With the installation of Bruce Naumann's 100 Live and Die at the heart of Benesse House in the museum's central cylinder room lit from above by natural light, an interest for themes such as light, life, and death emerged, as did the idea to pursue the creation of spaces of a transcendental spiritual quality, affecting all humans beyond any religious belief or dogma. The culmination of this approach is the Chichu Art Museum, which combines works by Claude Monet and site-specific installations by Walter de Maria and James Turrell, permanently exhibited in galleries built for and around the artworks. The museum structure is mostly buried in the ground, but its interior is entirely lit by natural light. Simple forms such as triangles or squares are inserted within the surrounding landscapes, questioning the fundamental relationship between nature and geometry. The clarity of form, the purity of lines, the materiality of Ando's architecture all point to the overarching theme of light and to the dimension of the sublime. The Chichu Art Museum is fascinating not only because of the harmony of nature, art, and architecture achieved here, But because of the kind of chemical reaction which operated to unite the different visions of the architect, of the artist, and their works, and of Mr. Fukutake, who imagined, commissioned, and oversaw the creation of this museum, this resulted in creating something almost miraculous. So this idea of merging architecture with the surrounding environment while accentuating the unique attribute of the place can also be found in following project on the island by other architects such as Sana and Hiroshi Sambuichi, even though each architect, of course, has his or her own individual approach and style. Importantly, architecture, that is to say, the architectural box is not prevailing in itself, but is rather conceived as an appropriate vessel, a kind of receptacle or artworks, and as a placemaking instrument. This becomes clear with the realization of the Chichu Art Museum. With the Art House project initiated in 1998, we started to also focus on the local community and its way of life, on preserving and subliming not only the natural landscapes, but also the cultural and historical dimensions of the place. In this project, a number of vacant houses dotted around the historical townscape of Homura were restored, and the artists visualized the history and significance of the land as they created works permanently exhibited in these houses. The programming intention of this project is to bring people to walk around the area and experience the overlapping of time and various human activities taking place in the village, to encourage encounters and promote exchange between visitors and residents, urban and rural dwellers, young and elderly people. Here, the focus is not on making by breaking on a scrap and build approach, but rather to make the best use of the wisdom and experience accumulated by past generations and local inhabitants. In other words, we advocate to respect the culture of the place, to connect the past and present, or understand the past from our present perspective, and to quote Mr. Fukutake's words, to use what exists to create what is to be. The public baths or local shrine serve practical purpose in the daily lives of the local community as a place where townspeople gather and communicate with each other. The restoration of such facilities therefore also contribute to strengthen the ties of the community as well as to preserve old customs. As local people then work to run the facilities, this also works to strengthen the bond among them and also with us. Go Shrine is a Shinto shrine dating back to the Edo period, which Hiroshi Sugimoto restored by connecting the underground stone chambers to the shrine's worship hall with a glass staircase, symbolically and physically uniting the worlds above and below. Allowing a contemporary artist to reinterpret and design architecture of such an ancient place of faith is hardly heard of in Japan. It does demonstrate the proximity of local people with art and hints at how profound their understanding of the medium is. The project most clearly representing the idea of resistance against the excess of urbanization and modernization is probably the Inujima Seirensho Art Museum. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of problem. This museum was created by restoring and breathing new life into the ruins of former copper refinery on Inujima. The museum unites the architecture of Hiroshi Sambuichi and the art of Yukinori Yanagi, Sambuichi, who strives to understand the Earth's details through his architecture and perceives architecture as forming part of the Earth, uses here resources found on site, such as the refinery's chimney or bricks made from copper slag. He also uses available natural energy sources like solar and geothermal energy. The museum also uses a water filtering system based on plants and minerals. Using such materials and resources, he created a structure which doesn't impact the surrounding environment. The entire project embraces the concept of a recycling-based society through its focus on industrial heritage, architecture, art, and the environment. Yanagi, on the other hand, used Yukio Mishima as a motif through his work in the museum in reference to the writer's resounding critique of the excess of modernizing Japan. While Yanagi's work, which explores various boundaries and overlapping themes, can also be seen at the Benesse House on Naoshima, the project on Inujima took shape as the artist lived for many years on this Inujima island. The Inujima refinery was once contributing force to the growing prosperity of modernizing Japan, but ironically, only the ruins remain today. Yukio Mishima, through his death by ritual suicide in 1970, questioned how Japan as a nation to preserve its identity and independence. The combination of the refinery and Mishima thus expresses a sense of anxiety pervading Japan's modern society, a society too much focused on economic growth, profit-making, and material values at the expense of critical thought, where the living standard became affluent, but people feel that something seems to be missing. Questioning the future ideals of Japan and of modern society at large. There are also some recurring themes explored by the artists at the Benesse Art Site Naoshima. One such theme is time. Shinro Otake, for example, through his abundant use of waste materials of the modern society, pays attention to accumulating layers of memory. Tatsuo Miyajima, here you are seeing, also references the passage of time through his use of digital counters. Most notably, Hiroshi Sugimoto, with his Seascape series, explored the concept of time on the dimension that goes beyond the human scale. The work of Mariko Mori, based on a Celtic legend, even though it is quite difficult to access, because it is located in the up of the colline, up of the hill. It is very difficult to access, but it is beautiful if seen from the sky, as it seems to suggest an expansive space seen not from a human perspective, but from the eyes of an alien creature watching from the above. This sense of a flow of time beyond the human scale can also be seen in the work of Hiroshi Senju. Using silver pigment oxidizing through the contact with air, the artists represent the passage of time from the morning's first rays of light to the darkness before dawn. But as oxidation will gradually transform the white background into shapes of twilight, it is not the artist who finished the work, but beyond the working of nature and time, the artist himself cannot witness its completion. For these screens, Senju uses momigami, crumbled paper, following a traditional Japanese paper craft technique, and applies mineral pigment on its wrinkled surface. The irregular flow of the paint on the paper leads to the discovery of accidental beauty in wrinkles and damages that would normally be fixed. The artist sees in it a hopeful message of regeneration and rebirth, which echoes the context of the island itself, whose nature was once damaged by pollution. Many of the artworks created here seems to be imbued with such a sense of resistance and requiem, evoking both wounds and hope of rebirth. This same sense of transcending the human scale can be perceived in Christian Boltanski's Heart Archive. Here, the artist focuses on the time and distance, the effort required to reach this remote place far away from the big city, envisioning the experience as a pilgrimage of sort. At the core of this work is the idea that the body of the artist, not to mention the building itself, their very physical existence will not resist the test of time and eventually decay. But here, family and people who have lost someone dear come from all over the world to listen to the heartbeat of the beloved one. And the story of their pilgrimage is what will remain in the future, like a mice. This idea of transcending physical materiality led the artist to conceive this small museum as the antithesis of a monument. To be as ordinary as possible, he chose to work with local carpenters for its construction and not a prominent architect. I mentioned earlier the idea of a symbiosis between nature, art, and architecture, and the relationship emerging between the architect, the artist, and Mr. Fukutake when describing the Chichu Art Museum. Similarly, the combination of architect and artist at the Inujima Seirensho Art Museum or Teshima Art Museum is not something that would usually be expected in an orthodox art historical perspective. It might even be perceived as being somewhat forced, but at the same time, Mr. Fukutake's unconventional kind of matchmaking approach sometimes also leads to unexpected results, which makes the project all the more exciting. Now, I would like to introduce here 3 key insights which were nurtured by Mr. Fukutake as the project grew over the past 30 years. Nature is man's best teacher. Use what exists to create what is to be. Economy is a servant to culture. All 3 ideas are self-explanatory and translate into actual form at Benesse Art Site Naoshima, as we have seen today. But it is notable that Mr. Fukutake, whose background is that of a business person, an entrepreneur passionate about the revitalization of local regions, perceives economic activity as forming the basis to serve a higher goal, that of nurturing cultural activities. The idea of commissioning works that can only exist here and which are of particular significance to the artist creating them leads the artist to explore new directions through their encounter with the island. I mentioned Hiroshi Sugimoto's Go Shrine previously. Before Naoshima, he was mainly working with the photographic medium, but he explored architecture for the first time in Naoshima. This experience later inspired him to continue working on architecture and to realize his own foundation space. It was just inaugurated last year as a place integrating his artworks, artifact collections, architecture, and nature. Following in the footsteps of his, I have other ones. Yeah, this is also another view of Hiroshi Sugimoto's private foundation facilities. And following in the footsteps of his waterfall series, Hiroshi Senju also initiated the major cliff series through his encounter with Naoshima, his cliff painted on Fusuma screens are now taking another dimension as he works on a large-scale project for the 1,200 years anniversary commemoration of the Koyasan Buddhist monastery, where his large-scale screens will be installed in a few years of time. Considering the Teshima Art Museum, one can wonder if this building designed by Rue Nishizawa can be considered architecture, or it is a museum at all. Or Kazuyo Sejima conduct various workshops with local residents on Inujima for Inujima Life Garden project. It's one of the recent projects that she's developing. It is to revive land and enjoy self-reliance in areas from food to energy, while experiencing the joy of living within the cycle of nature. If these workshops and activities can be considered part of standard architectural practice, our site seems to create the conditions for many such explorations and increasing questions. One of the keys to such developments lies in the long-term and the continuing relationship created with many of the artists and architects involved in our activities. When Henri Sala presented the work he installed in a house located by the seaside in Teshima to local residents, he greeted the participants to the event by thanking them for accepting him into the neighborhood. In other words, when artists and architects create such connections to the place, emerges a sense that they belong here, can always return and have somewhat become part of the local community. This encourages them to proactively think about what can be achieved, fostering initiative taking and more creative collaborative frameworks. Also, local people start to perceive and think about the region through the eyes of artists and architects and develop a renewed sense of pride for it. Artists and architects, on the other hand, are inspired by the place and stimulated to think about new possibilities and in turn convey such ideas to the broader world. Many people, including ourselves, get drawn in the process. Perceptions are transformed, and from these tiny islands in the Seto Inland Sea, a creative magnetic field emerges where new ways of living, new perspectives, and identities can be explored and take shape. As I said, I cannot talk about everything in this framework. In Naoshima, there are also Ryufan Museum, Ando Museum. Regarding Art House project, there are also other collaboration of James Tarrell, Tadawando, and Yoshihiro Suda, Rei Naito, etc. In Inujima, there are also another art and architecture project. We also collaborate with Setouchi Art Festival, a kind of triennial exhibition organized by local government. So please check out our website, and more importantly, please come and visit to experience. To conclude, I should maybe return to our starting point that our activities are indeed quite different from what is conventionally understood as standard museum practice. But in the first place, it may not be so important to question whether we are an art institution or not. Still, it is maybe useful to remember the etymology of the word museum. In ancient Greek, museion denoted the shrine dedicated to Mnemosyne, the mythological goddess of memory, serving as a device to explore memories of the past, reconstruct the present, and project into the future. Considering this, isn't thinking about the connections between art, architecture, nature, and the region, reflecting about the nature of ancient landscapes, about where we came from and what we will leave for the future, how we should live our lives. And all these practices and questions fundamentally connected to the very nature of what a museum is, and maybe also suggesting new possibilities. Thank you. That's all. I'm so glad that there are a little bit more people in the end. So,
ecco, mi sentite? Volevo ringraziarti per questo straordinario racconto che veramente ci ha aiutato a attraversare i mille volti di questo progetto che, come dire, ci fa presagire ulteriori storie e ulteriori sviluppi anche per gli anni a venire. Quindi, insomma, siamo molto curiosi di capire quali saranno anche le nuove sfide del Benesse Art Site. Ma a parte questo, volevo sapere se il pubblico aveva delle domande da fare, delle curiosità da poter chiedere a Akiko. Non ci sono curiosità anche rispetto ai progetti? Sì, ecco il microfono.
No, non ho ben capito il passaggio quando lei ha parlato del suicidio rituale di Mishima. Perché l'ha citato e in quale contesto?
Suicide. I see. Okay. Yes. You know Mishima, very famous novelist. Yes, and who committed suicide in 1970. Yes, and his suicide has symbolized that he is questioning what is the future of Japan and what is the identity of Japan. So that was actually the message which has been given by his suicide. So this idea was very much important for Yanagi by using the motif of Yanagi for his Inujima Museum project. Because he also wanted to question this message that what is the future of Japan and what is the identity of Japan. And the questioning really, maybe Japanese people has lost our souls by selling ourselves for the economy.
Ci sono altre domande?
So if you don't have any question, I just want to add some anecdote because I've been doing this lecture quite often, and many people ask why Ando was selected as architect. And so I would like to answer on behalf of Mr. Fukutake. Of course, there are several reasons, but he always wants to answer that because he's not from Tokyo, because Mr. Fukutake is anti-Tokyo, and he didn't want to work with Tokyo architect. And Tadao Ando is from Osaka. And so that was symbolically very important for him. And another architect that we've been working very closely is Hiroshi Sambuichi, and who is also living in Hiroshima and not from Tokyo. So that's one thing that maybe you want to know. And another question that we also often asked is, do you have any intention to work with other architects, from overseas? And yeah, unfortunately, it's not really on the plan at this moment, because as you may have noticed that for our project, this long-term relationship is very important, and also the architect and artist who are involved in the project has to really understand the history and the context of the place. So this is why so far it is rather limited number of architects that we are working, but maybe we don't know the future, so things may change, but at this moment there is no plan for that.
Grazie ancora. Allora, se non ci sono altre domande da parte del pubblico, io ringrazierei ancora Akiko, il Benesse Art Site, e sicuramente verremo a trovarti perché veramente ci ha appassionato molto questo racconto. Vuoi aggiungere altro?
I just want to answer to what you are mentioning, for the future, because it's been already 30 years that we've been working, and we are facing a kind of, how I can say, the shifting time. Because up to now, we are making a lot of hardship, how can I say. It's more like material things, like building the architectures and installation work and commissioning sculpture works and etc., etc. But rather than this kind of things, that we are more moving towards a kind of soft side. That means that because it is a small community, the island is not that big. I mentioned that there are about 3 islands, mainly we are working, and Naoshima has about 3,000 inhabitants, which is the biggest one, whereas one of the smallest one is Inujima, which has only about 30-something people living now, and the average age is 70-something. And it is very sad to say, but every a couple of months there is funerals because there are aged people. So this is a reality. We have to face to that reality. That means there is the proper size. You can't just develop and you can't just add things. That there is a very good the size, appropriate size of artistic architectural activities and then also the inhabitant normal life. So if there are too many things coming, then they would be suffered, they will be tired. So for certain island, we believe that we have made, we have advanced many projects, but now we have to think what we can do with what we have made. So I think we are a little bit of a transitional period that we are thinking how we'll be doing for the future project. So maybe I will come back in 30 years to talk about the 30 years development. So.
Un'ultima domanda, nel frattempo avrei voglia di chiederti questo. Abbiamo visto durante questo ciclo come il tema dell'arte ambientale sia un tema molto vasto e come poi le espressioni siano diverse da progetto a progetto. Dei casi come la fattoria Celle nasce da un progetto familiare, di collezionismo familiare, che poi travalica gli spazi dell'abitazione dell'edificio per arrivare poi nel parco, e così lo Yorkshire Park e l'Oasi Zegna, quindi 3 casi molto diversi tra loro. Per il Benesse Art Site c'è stata un'idea, un pensiero, un progetto ispirato a qualche altro progetto di arte ambientale? C'è stata appunto un altro parco, un museo, qualche altro esempio alla quale vi siete ispirati nel progettare e nell'immaginare questa idea di grande spazio in cui arte e architettura dialogano con il contesto, con l'ambiente circostante?
Yeah, I've been working with Mr. Futake since 1994 for that exhibition. That the first we have installed the artworks in the nature, like the one of the Yayoi Kusama's iconic pumpkin sculptures. And at the very first phase of our activities, there are a lot of different inspirations. There are something like, Inselhofbräu in Germany, or even Claude Müller when we are discussing about installing Monet's work. And then also, of course, some of the landmark project in the United States, like Dransjad, Malfa project. And then also, of course, since we have worked a lot with James Turrell, although it's not finished yet, but his the ongoing project. And yeah, there are many different inspirations behind this project. But one thing that Mr. Futake keeps telling is that he never himself considered as a collector. It's not a private collector, that he was collecting artworks and ended up with making museums. It's just he was inspired by the power of artworks, and art has a certain power to give a message, and it is so that based on this belief that he has also had a communication with many different artists, and then also with us curators and architects and etc. And little by little, and he has ended up with concrete ideas of what it is now. But of course, there are many different inspirations.
Examples. Okay. Allora direi che possiamo chiudere qui. Ringrazio ancora Akiko e grazie a voi di aver preso parte a questo incontro.
Thank you very much. I have brought a book, so if you are interested in, you can just take a look before leave.